The call came at 3:17 in the morning. My granddaughter's name was on the screen. I was sitting upright before the second pulse. I've been woken up by a phone at 3 in the morning more times than I can count. For 30 years, a call at that hour meant one thing. Someone was in trouble, and I had a narrow window to do something about it before the situation got worse. You don't panic after enough of those calls, you just move. Her voice was low and controlled, the way a person sounds after they've been crying long enough that the crying is done, and what's left is just the information. Grandpa, I'm at the hospital. She broke my wrist, but she told the doctor I slipped in the tub. Dad is with her. One question. Which hospital? St. Augustine. The ER. I'm leaving now. Don't say anything to anyone until I get there. A short pause, then okay. I was dressed in 4 minutes and out the door by 3:22. My name is Gerald Oakes. I'm 63 years old. I spent 30 years as a private investigator in Charleston, South Carolina before I retired. I've read people for a living my entire adult life. I know the difference between a story someone is telling and a story someone has prepared. Lily is 15. She's also the reason I have a second phone line that nobody in her household knows about, a number I gave her 8 months ago, quietly, over lunch on a Tuesday when her father Daniel was at work. She didn't ask why I was giving it to her. She folded the paper and put it in the small interior pocket of her jacket. Not her bag, not her back pocket, the inside pocket, the one harder to find. She understood exactly what I was handing her. She used it tonight. I pulled out of my driveway and drove through empty streets toward St. Augustine Medical Center. Here's what I need you to understand before I tell you what happened at that hospital. I didn't walk in there as a worried grandfather reacting to a crisis. I walked in as a man who had been building a case for 8 months, hoping he'd never need to use it, and completely prepared to use every single piece of it. I saw Natalie clearly the first time I met her. That was 14 months ago at a dinner Daniel hosted to introduce her to the family. She arrived 10 minutes late with a story that was slightly too detailed to be spontaneous. She pulled out Daniel's chair before he reached it. But the gesture wasn't for him, it was for the room. Within the first 20 minutes, she asked me, framed as casual curiosity, whether I still had active contacts in law enforcement, whether I owned my house outright, and whether I'd thought about what retirement looked like going forward. I've spent 30 years reading people. I registered every one of those questions as inventory. I didn't say anything that night. She hadn't done anything I could point to, but I drove home and kept my own counsel. October was when I stopped registering and started documenting. Lily showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon without calling ahead. She'd ridden her bike over, which I'd consider exercise rather than logistics. She was wearing a long-sleeved shirt in 68-degree weather. When she reached for her glass of water at my kitchen table, the sleeve rode up slightly and I saw the bruise before she could adjust it. I know the difference between a fall bruise and a contact bruise. 30 years of working with physical evidence teaches you that, she told me. She fell off her bike. Gave me the specific block, the specific crack in the sidewalk. She had prepared the story carefully, which told me she'd been preparing stories for longer than this one. I didn't push. I got her some ice. I asked the questions a grandfather asks, and after she left, I opened a new note on my phone. October 14th. Lily, unannounced visit, bruise left forearm, contact pattern, not consistent with reported bicycle fall. Long sleeves, warm weather, story prepared in advance. Level of detail suggests rehearsal, did not confront. Watching, that was entry number 1. Over the next 8 months, I built the record the way I built case files for 30 years. Methodical, no gaps, no interpretation beyond what the evidence actually supported. I noted November when Lily barely spoke at Thanksgiving and Natalie answered 2 questions directed at Daniel before he finished opening his mouth. I noted December when Daniel called to tell me Lily wouldn't be staying with me for the week between Christmas and New Year's, the way she had every year since she was 4. I noted the flat tone in his voice when he said it. I noted January when Lily's text response time stretched from same day to 3 days to 5. The messages themselves changed. Shorter, neutral. The particular blankness of someone composing messages they know will be read by someone else first. In February, I did 2 things. I gave Lily the second phone number at a Tuesday lunch when Daniel was at work. I slid the folded paper across the table and told her simply, this is a line only you have. No one else knows it exists. You never have to use it. But if you ever need to reach me and you can't use your regular phone, this is how. She looked at the paper. She didn't ask why. She put it in the inside pocket of her jacket, and we talked about her history class for the rest of the hour. I also asked Daniel if I could install a dash cam in the family SUV. The reason I gave him was honest, just incomplete. The vehicle was older, and I told him it was for insurance purposes. He said sure, without asking further. I installed it myself that weekend. Entry 41 was written 5 days before the 317 call. Sunday visit restricted to 2 hours. Heavier makeup around jaw, left side. Said it was new foundation possible. Also possible not. Documenting that's what I was thinking about as I drove toward St. Augustine. Not panic, not anger. Just the case, running in order, the way I'd built it. I pulled into the hospital parking structure at 3:39, found a space on the second level, turned off the engine, and sat for exactly 4 seconds, not because I needed to collect myself. In 30 years of investigative work, I learned that 4 seconds of absolute stillness before you enter a room is the difference between walking in as the person who controls the situation and walking in as someone reacting to it. I get out of the car. I know what I'm walking into. I know what I'm going to do. Neil Greer sees me before I reach the nurse's station. I know this because I see him see me. The specific moment when recognition crosses a person's face and something underneath it shifts. Neil is reviewing a chart at the station with a resident when the automatic doors open and I walk through. He hands the chart to the resident without looking at it. "Give us the room," he says. Quiet. He doesn't need to be loud. Neil Greer and I go back 12 years. I worked a case that involved his family. He was in a situation where the wrong people had the right paperwork, and I spent 6 weeks making sure the right people got it back. He has never forgotten that. I was counting on exactly that tonight. He walked toward me halfway across the floor. He looked like a man who had been carrying something for 2 hours and just identified the person he could hand it to. "Gerald, Neil, tell me where she is and tell me what you filed." He held my eyes for 1 beat. "I haven't filed anything yet." "Why not?" The stepmother corroborated her own story. "Lily refused treatment twice while Natalie was in the room. I wanted to know if she had family coming before I put anything permanent on record." He paused. "I had my charge nurse let her use a personal phone about 90 minutes ago." I looked at him for a moment. Neil Greer does not do things without reasons. The reason he just gave me was the right one. "Thank you." I said, "Where is she?" "Bay 4. I moved Daniel and Natalie to the family waiting area 40 minutes ago." "Fracture pattern," he lowered his voice. "Not consistent with a fall. Consistent with forced hyperextension. I've seen it before." He paused. "I also sent the imaging to Floyd Ingram at Musk Pediatric Ortho. He confirmed my read. A beat. Gerald. There's a healed fracture in the same limb. Distal ulna. 6 to 9 months old. Never received treatment." I stood very still for a moment. A fracture that healed without treatment. That meant Lily had managed it alone. The pain of it. The covering of it. The decision not to tell anyone. I filed the feeling, "Not now." Later, "File the report." I said, "Complete, accurate, everything you observed. Include the mechanism inconsistency." He nodded once, "Already drafted, waiting to confirm she had someone." "She has someone," I said. He picked up the chart and walked toward his office. I walked toward Bay 4. Lily was sitting on the exam table with her back against the wall, left arm in a temporary splint, right knee pulled to her chest. She looked up when I pushed the curtain aside. The sound she made wasn't a word. It was a month of held breath releasing all at once. I pulled the chair close and sat at her level, not standing over her, same height. "I'm here. You're safe. Nobody comes in this room without my permission." She nodded, eyes dry. She'd already passed the stage of tears, which told me she'd been managing this alone for longer than tonight. I asked her to tell me what happened. I listened the way I listened to clients for 30 years, completely without steering, without reacting in ways that would cause her to edit herself. She told me about the argument that started over dinner, the specific thing she said that Natalie decided was disrespectful, the hallway, Daniel in the other room. The drive to the hospital with Natalie explaining in a calm, organized voice exactly what Lily had done to cause the fall. "Dad was in the passenger seat," she said. "He didn't turn around once." When she finished, I asked 3 questions. Specific, no judgment in the tone. I needed dates. I needed to know if there were other incidents that left marks, and I needed to know if anyone at school had noticed anything. Her answers took 11 minutes. I didn't interrupt once. When she finished, I put my hand over hers carefully, away from the injured arm. "You did everything right tonight. Calling me, keeping the phone hidden, telling me not to say anything until I got there. That was exactly right." She looked at me. "What happens now?" "Now I make some calls. And while I do that, no one gets near you. That's not a hope. That's a fact." She held my eyes for a moment, deciding whether to believe the situation was under control. I've seen that look before on clients who weren't sure yet if they could trust the person sitting across from them. "Okay," she said. Then after a moment, she looked down at her splinted arm. "Is Dad okay?" I held that question for a second before I answered. It is the thing about Lily that has always made me love her with a specific kind of fierceness, even here, even now. First instinct is to ask about someone else. "I don't know yet," I told her honestly, "but that's not your job to figure out tonight." Tonight, your only job is to tell the truth to the people who are going to help you. Can you do that? Yes, she said, without hesitation. I squeezed her hand once. Then I stepped outside the curtain and went to work. The first call was to Patricia Holt, the charge nurse on the floor. She appeared at my elbow 30 seconds after I stepped into the hallway. Neil had already briefed her. Patricia, what's the situation in the family waiting area? The stepmother asked twice to speak with the attending. Both times I told her the evaluation was in progress. She raised her voice the second time. I documented both interactions with timestamps. She said it with the specific tone of someone who had been waiting to be useful and was now being asked to be exactly that. Keep them in that waiting area. If Natalie attempts to enter the clinical area, call security and call me at the same time. Already have security on standby, she said. Then she went back to her station. The second call was to Renata Vasquez, the hospital's on-call social worker. I had her number from a child protection task force I consulted on 4 years before I fully retired. She answered on the second ring at 4:17 in the morning. Renata, it's Gerald Oakes. I'm at St. Augustine with a 15-year-old. Suspected physical abuse by a stepmother. Fracture inconsistent with reported mechanism. Father corroborating the stepmother's story. The attending has a report drafted. I need you here. 2 seconds. I'm 20 minutes out. The third call I made from the far end of the corridor near the stairwell, where the foot traffic was nothing. Frances Aldridge has been my attorney for 15 years. She answered on the third ring with a voice that was alert in a way that suggested she had not been entirely asleep. Frances, I need emergency temporary custody of my granddaughter. Tonight if possible, tomorrow morning at the latest. I have a medical report being filed right now, a social worker on the way, 41 documented entries going back 8 months on my phone, and dashcam footage you're going to want to see before anyone else does. 4 seconds of silence. Frances processing, not hesitating. In 15 years I have never seen her hesitate. Send me everything right now. I'll review it on the way. On the way. I'm already getting dressed, she said. 35 minutes. She arrived in 31. While I waited, I pulled up the dash cam footage on my phone. The timestamp was from tonight. Natalie driving the family SUV. Lily visible in the back seat, clearly holding her arm, clearly in distress. They arrived at the hospital entrance. Natalie stopped the vehicle. She sat there for 4 minutes without moving, and then she drove away. She dropped Lily at the entrance and left. She knew exactly what had happened. She drove home before anyone could place her at the scene. The plan, I figured, was to say Lily had gone on her own. Called a ride. Natalie didn't know I existed in this situation. She didn't know about the second phone. She didn't know about the dash cam. She didn't know about 41 entries sitting in a notes app on my phone going back to October. I forwarded the clip to Frances before she walked through the door. Then I forwarded it to Renata. When they arrived, I gave them both everything in order, without gaps. Frances sat in the small conference room Patricia had unlocked for us and read through my notes on her phone while Renata went in to speak with Lily. I stood outside the curtain for all 40 minutes of that interview, every single one. At the 20-minute mark, Frances looked up, Gerald, entry 37, November. Heavier coverage along the jaw, left side. You wrote, possible, also possible not. She paused. That equivocation is useful. It shows you documented what you observed without overstating it. A judge reads that as credible. That's why I wrote it that way, I said. She looked at me over her reading glasses for a moment. Then she went back to reading. Renata came out at 5:03. She pulled the curtain behind her and walked 2 steps toward me before she spoke. Her account is consistent, detailed, and internally coherent, she said. She describes a pattern of escalating physical incidents over approximately 14 months, beginning with what she calls isolated events and progressing in frequency and severity. Tonight was not the first time. It was the first time she sought outside help. I absorbed this without expression. How many incidents does she recall that left visible marks? 7, possibly more, she is not yet ready to name. Renata paused. She also described a pattern of isolation. Phone access monitored, school activities restricted, visits to extended family systematically reduced. She identified the onset as approximately 2 months after the marriage. Beside me, Frances had put down her phone. She was listening. She presented as credible, Renata continued. No rehearsed quality, no inconsistencies. She self-corrected twice when her memory on specific dates was uncertain, which is consistent with honest recollection rather than a fabricated account. She looked at me directly. I'm filing a mandatory report to Child Protective Services. Tonight, notification goes out within the hour. Good, I said. There will be a CPS investigator assigned by tomorrow morning. They'll want to interview Lily separately and visit the home. She is not going back to that home before any of that happens, Frances said. Not to either of us in particular. She was already picking up her phone. At 5:21, Patricia found me at the end of the hallway. Natalie came back, she said. She's requesting to speak with administration. Claims the hospital is interfering in a family matter. She paused. Her affect is controlled. The kind of controlled that takes effort. She has been on her phone frequently. Is Daniel still in the waiting area? Yes. He hasn't spoken to her in approximately 40 minutes. They're on opposite sides of the room. Opposite sides of the room at 5 in the morning after a night like this one is information. Document every request she makes. Exact language, timestamps, everything goes into the record. Already is, Patricia said, and went back to her station. At 6:45, 2 officers from Charleston PD arrived at the hospital in response to Renata's CPS notification, which had triggered an automatic police referral under state protocol for physical abuse of a minor. I met Officer Stuart Mercer in the corridor before he reached the waiting area. He was late 40s, wrote everything down, asked questions in a specific order that told me he had done this before and had a system. His partner was younger, said almost nothing, photographed everything. I gave Mercer my name, my background, and a clean summary of the timeline. 8 months of documented observations. Tonight's injury, Neil's report. The second read from Floyd Ingram at MUSA. The healed prior fracture. Renata's intake findings. The dashcam footage. I gave him the information in the order a report should be written, because in my experience, the easier you make it for law enforcement to do their job, the better they do it. He wrote everything down. When I finished, he looked up. You've been documenting this since October. On your own initiative before tonight, yes. He held my eyes for a moment. Sir, most family members come to us after the fact with a feeling. You came to us with a case file. 30 years as a PI, I said. The habit doesn't turn off. He nodded once slowly. We'll need to speak with your granddaughter. My attorney is here. She'll coordinate that with you. Lily has already spoken with the social worker and is prepared to speak with you, on the condition that I remain accessible just outside the room. That's standard, he said. I know, I said. I've read the protocol. He almost smiled. At 6:58, Andrea Simmons, the school principal, called me back. I had reached out to her at 6 on the dot because she had given me her personal number 2 years earlier after I delivered a safety presentation to her staff. She answered on the 4th ring. Gerald, is everything all right? No, I said. I need to talk to you about Lily, and I need you to tell me honestly whether your staff has documented anything about her this year. A pause that was not hesitation. Recognition. How much time do you have? As much as you need. What Andrea told me over the next 18 minutes filled in gaps I hadn't been able to close from the outside. Her guidance counselor, Sylvia Brennan, had a conversation with Lily in September that Lily ended abruptly when she spotted Natalie's car in the pickup line. Sylvia had documented the conversation in her case notes because Lily had seemed on the verge of saying something specific and then visibly shut down. She had flagged it internally but hadn't reached the threshold for mandatory reporting because Lily had not disclosed anything directly. There was a creative writing assignment from November, a fictional story about a girl who made herself invisible at home. The teacher had kept it not because of any single explicit line but because of the cumulative texture of it. It read, Andrea said, like someone describing something real through the thinnest possible layer of fiction. And in February, Lily had been absent for 4 days following what the family reported as a stomach illness. The timing had registered with Andrea without her knowing why. She had noted it in her own records. Andrea, I said, I need a written statement of everything you just told me, not the assignments themselves, just what your staff observed, what was documented, and when. Can you have something to my attorney by 8 this morning? I can have it by 7:30, she said. Gerald, is she okay? She will be, I said, and this time I meant it in the present tense, not the future. At 7:04, Francis received confirmation from Judge Philip Bauer's clerk that the emergency custody petition had been received and was under review. At 7:30, Andrea's written statement arrived in Francis's email. 3 pages, specific dates, specific staff names, specific observations. Francis read it in 4 minutes, made 2 notes, and looked up at me. This is enough, she said, combined with everything else. In 15 years, I have heard Francis say those 3 words exactly 3 times before today. Each time she was right. How long, I asked. Judge Bauer reviews it personally. His clerk says he's in the office by 8. She checked her watch. Less than an hour. I went back to Bay 4. Lily was awake, sitting in the same position against the wall, the blanket Patricia had left folded at the end of the table now pulled around her shoulders. She looked at me when I came in. You've been out there a long time, she said. I've been working, I said. I sat down in the chair. There's something I want to ask you. When this goes further, and it will go further, there may come a point where someone asks you to speak in front of a courtroom. You don't have to decide anything right now, but I want you to know that option exists and it's yours to make, not mine. She was quiet for a moment. Would it matter? Your words, combined with everything else we have, would matter a great deal. She looked at the wall for a moment, then she looked back at me. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking, I said. Francis called at 8:14. I was standing at the coffee machine at the end of the hallway, the one that produces something that resembles coffee the way a sketch resembles a photograph. The judge signed, she said, 2 words that rearranged everything that came after them. Emergency temporary custody, 90 days effective immediately. You are Lily's legal guardian as of 8:09 this morning. Natalie has been formally notified that she is prohibited from any contact with the minor. Daniel has been notified as a secondary party. He retains parental rights, but all decisions regarding Lily's welfare during the custody period require your authorization. I set down the coffee I was not going to drink anyway. Francis, thank you. Don't thank me yet. 90 days goes fast. We need to build the permanent case in parallel. This buys us time. It doesn't finish the work. I know, I said. What do I do first? Tell your granddaughter, she said. Everything else can wait 10 minutes. I pulled the curtain aside quietly. Lily was awake. She had been awake for a while, I think, in the way people are awake before they let themselves be seen awake, holding on to the last few minutes before the world requires something of them. She looked at me. I sat down in the chair. I told her simply in the same direct language I had used with clients for 30 years, because Lily had earned directness, and I have never believed that protecting people from information actually protects them from anything. A judge signed an emergency custody order at 8:09 this morning. You're coming home with me. Natalie cannot contact you. That's not a plan. It's a legal fact as of 45 minutes ago. She stared at me. 45 minutes ago? I didn't want to tell you until it was done, I said. I don't deal in maybes. Something moved across her face. Not one thing, several things in quick succession. The way a person processes news they needed to hear and had stopped letting themselves want. She pressed her lips together. Her chin did the thing chins do when a person is deciding whether to cry and then deciding not to. She decided not to. Okay, she said. Then after a moment, can we get real coffee before we go home? The stuff here tastes like hot cardboard. I looked at her for one beat. There's a place 2 blocks from my house that opens at 8:30, I said. You can have whatever you want. For the first time since I pushed that curtain aside at 4 in the morning, she smiled. Brief, tired, completely real. Before we left, I found Daniel in the family waiting area. He was alone. Natalie was gone. Officer Mercer told me she had left voluntarily after being informed of the custody order and the no-contact provision. Left without incident, which Mercer noted with the quiet surprise of someone who had been prepared for more. Daniel looked like a man who had been awake all night, sitting inside a decision he hadn't made yet. He looked up when I walked in. I sat across from him. Not beside him. This conversation required him to see my face. I told him about the custody order. I told him about the dashcam footage and exactly what it showed. I told him about the 41 entries going back to October. I told him about the healed fracture that was 6 to 9 months old and had never received treatment. I did not tell him what Lily had described about specific incidents. That was her account to share in her own time, not mine. He listened. He did not look away. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I should have seen it. There are a lot of things I could have said to that. I chose the one that was most useful. You can see it now, I said. That option is still open. He looked at his hands. Is she okay? She's going to be okay, I said. She already ordered coffee. He made a sound that wasn't quite anything. I put my card on the table in front of him. My personal cell, the same number I had given Lily 8 months ago. When you're ready to talk, I said, not before. But when you are, I left him there with the card and whatever he was working through. I could not work through it for him, and trying would have been an insult to the intelligence I know he has. Natalie was charged 9 days later. 2 counts of felony assault causing bodily injury to a minor. 1 count of domestic violence. 1 count of child endangerment. The dashcam footage, combined with the healed prior fracture and 41 documented entries, moved it from misdemeanor to felony. The DA noted specifically that the footage demonstrated prior knowledge of the injury. She knew. She planned. She just did not plan for me. 3 months after that phone call, I'm sitting on my front porch on a Tuesday morning when I hear Lily laughing at something on her phone inside the house. Not the careful laugh I had cataloged in entries 11 through 19, the one she used when Natalie was in the room. The other kind. The one that comes before the brain decides whether it is appropriate. I keep writing what I'm writing, but I mark the moment. 6 weeks after the custody order, Lily told me she'd decided to testify at the trial. She did not ask my opinion first. She told me afterward, which is the correct order, she said. I kept thinking if I don't say it out loud, it's like it didn't happen. And it happened. I looked at her for a moment. That's exactly right, I said. She said, Francis told me our case is pretty much airtight. Frances is rarely wrong, I said. She said pretty much, not completely. Frances never says completely, I said. That's how you know she's good. Lily almost smiled. You and Frances are the same person, she said. I thought about it. We both keep good notes, I said. I open my phone that night and write entry 47. Lily laughed today, the real kind, logging it. There are things I would do differently. There's one I have not said out loud yet, and I want to say it now. I would have given her the phone number in October, not February. Those 4 months between when I knew and when I acted, those are 4 months I cannot give back. The outcome was the same. That does not make those months not have happened. She managed them alone, with a composure that should never have been required of a 15-year-old. I carry that, not as punishment, as information, as the thing that makes me going forward, someone who acts on what he knows one step sooner than he is comfortable acting. That is the only use of a mistake that matters. She called me at 3:17 in the morning because she had a number that worked and she believed I would come. That is the whole of it. The 41 entries, the dash cam, the custody order, the charges, all of it proceeds from that one fact. She believed I would come. If you're watching this and you have a gut feeling about someone in your family's life, something that registered but you haven't been able to name yet, do not wait for confirmation. Document what you see. Write it down with dates. Trust what 30 years of living has already taught you to recognize. The people who need you are counting on you to act before the night everything goes wrong, not after. I came because I was ready. That is the whole of it.